again, it's a long and involved story, but in essence, we raided the house in darkness. The offender had changed the hinges on the door to make it open outwards, which slows down an entry team. He was pretty clever in what he did. He'd built a trapdoor into his bedroom to try and escape that way. And my plan had changed to, because I couldn't use distractions anymore, so flashbangs or tear gas, the only thing I could do was have a team throw a ladder through his bedroom window to make it appear that they were making entry through that way, which was what we sometimes did. And I tried to gain covert entry in through the back door, but that was impossible. And my instructions were, if you hear us starting to sledgehammer or smash the way in through the back door, throw the ladder through the window. That should distract him long enough for us to get in. So our entry took probably 3 seconds longer than it should have, which is a long time in the tactical world. But in the meantime, as we started smashing away in, the ladder team did what they were told, and then there were two, within a half a second, two high-powered, heavy-caliber rifle shots. So he jumped straight out of bed and fired through the floor of the skirting board of the house where men would have been clambering up that ladder. So it was on. So we made our way through the house according to the plan, got to the bedroom. Legally we were obliged to call out police, police, police. So he knew when we were coming. And he simply opened fire on us. The bullet-resistant vest we were using in those days were only designed to stop a pistol or a shotgun fire. And he was using a 223 caliber rifle. So for any people listening there, that's equivalent to a 5.56 M4 military round. And they travel at around, 1,200 feet per second or more. So he shot Peter 4 times in the torso and once through the wrist. And this was pitch black. We only had small torches on our weapons, and middle of winter and pitch black. And I just have vivid memory of the flashes of gunfire and the sounds and so on. And this all happened incredibly quickly. So Peter was shot. The number 2 guy in the room was pushed aside by the force of Peter's body running into him. I was in charge of the team, so my position was number 4. That's just the way a tactical team works, for whatever reason. But I had railed against that, and I wanted to be first in through the door. In that macho sort of alpha male craziness, and so I was number 4, and number 3 was my best friend, and Steve and I had lived together and worked together for years, and he was shot in the lower torso, and the round picked him up and pushed him back into the hallway. The assault team leader of number 2, who were tasked to go to the back of the house and protect the children, started engaging the bad guy, and then the both of us rushed into the bedroom and shot him to death. And I make no bones about that, and I've never lost a moment's sleep over it. But what I went through next cost me 30 years of my life with survivor guilt and PTSD. Lights of the bedroom were turned on, the offender was down, and he had been trying to get to the trapdoor in the corner of the room. He'd fired back at us and, missed me by 6 inches, I think, the forensics later showed. But I went over to where Peter was and just, the bullets had all gone through his vest, and he was in a massive amount of pain. And I comforted him for as much as I could until the ambulances or all the paramedics arrived and took him away, and he died 2 hours later. And I just lapsed into this incredible blackness, and I blamed myself for not arguing more for the use of the equipment that I needed. I knew we needed to use. I blamed myself for not being first in through the door and agreeing for him to go first. I blame myself for all of these things that in hindsight were just completely outside my control. But that doesn't do anything when you're damaged, when you're emotionally screwed. And Steve, the other guy who'd been wounded, thank God he survived. But he was I think he died in the operating table 3 or 4 times. So by the time I got in to see him, which I think was 3 days later, I was just a mess, and I remember getting in to see him and sitting beside his bed, and this is typical cop black humour, and holding his hand, on the verge of tears, and he opened his eyes and he went, "What are you doing, mate? You think we're gay? I'm trying to tune a couple of nurses, for God's sake." The guy's there and he's been operated on a number of times and still has the bullet in his just in front of his spine now. They couldn't take it out because it would have crippled him. So, but he's recovered. I see him a lot when I go back to Queensland. But that was an experience that I just never envisaged going through. Because as I said, we'd done it hundreds and hundreds of times without a shot being fired. But this guy was just wanted to shoot it out and go out in a blaze of glory, and take as many of us with him as he could, I guess. And that's the mentality of some of them. And then, in those days, there was no support. There was no psychological support. We had the funeral. Peter was killed on a Wednesday morning. The funeral was on a Friday. So the autopsy was rushed through and all of that stuff was and so it should have been. It was a massive police funeral. And then I just fell into a mess. I was drinking every day. I couldn't sleep. I had flashbacks, hypervigilance. And then maybe a month or so later, I was told that the 2 of us who'd killed the offender had a price on our heads from organised criminals in Sydney. So we were then given permission to carry our sidearms off duty, and that was it. There was no other support. So I was suddenly, in a situation where I was armed all the time, and I was sitting at home. Again, I can't remember. Maybe 2 months later after that, maybe a month after that, and drinking. I drank every night. I never told anybody how badly affected I was because I didn't want to be put behind a desk. So I was drinking every night, going to work in the morning, running, training, planning jobs, executing jobs, coming home, drinking, going to work, same. And one night I just sat there. My partner was out working. She was in advertising. She was at a function. And I was sitting there and just thinking about everything. Well, that job, because that's all that consumed my thoughts. Thinking about, is there something after, what pain would he have gone through, all of that. And then I still don't know why, but for some reason I picked up my my firearm and it was a semi-automatic pistol, chambered back the slide and chambered around and put it in my mouth and thought about killing myself. And every time I talk about this, and I've talked about this a lot, I get that visceral taste, if visceral is the right word, but I actually get that taste of gun oil. My brain triggers it back again. Because I had the barrel just sitting on my tongue and just thinking, all I've got to do now is squeeze the trigger with my thumb and it all goes away. And I thought, I had a flashback to a suicide I'd gone to where a man had killed himself with an old 303 World War II rifle, and taken the top of his head off, and there was brain spatter and blood everywhere and so on. And I remember thinking, if I do this, she's going to come home to that, and that will ruin her life. So it wasn't fear of death or a conscious, self-protection thing. It was more about what impact it would have on her. And then when I had that thought, I took it out of my mouth and thought, my God, I'm in big trouble. Oh, Jesus, So stripped it all down and then went to bed. Woke up the next morning and went to work and thought, I don't know what to do. I didn't feel that I could talk to anybody. We didn't do that. As I said earlier in the podcast, the alpha personality, we didn't tell each other how we were feeling. So I just put on this great facade, tough guy facade, and just continued on. And then I was just getting progressively more and more murderous. I wanted to be on every job I could to wreak revenge for Pete. I wanted to kill every crook I could. That was justified, of course, but but I knew full well I was also heading down a path that I may well do something that wasn't completely kosher. And I never wanted to be that guy. So after a siege, about a year later, where another guy was shot, I just thought I've got to get out of this, because I'm turning into the monster that I know exists, that we all have capacity to do. We all have a capacity to let the dark side control us, and mine was starting to take over. And I just thought, I've got to go. So I left the job that I thought I'd be doing forever, and went back into the covert world of surveillance and criminal intelligence, and then into sometime later I was promoted to detective sergeant into the major crime area.
You said you were kind of carrying everything until 2019 when you spoke to that psychologist, but you'd managed to lift yourself up a wee bit, had you?
I'd realised what the potential was going to be, and I knew that if I'd stayed in that tactical world, I'd become someone that I'm not. I knew that I'd become an operator that just really didn't care about giving people an opportunity to surrender. If there's a minuscule opportunity, I was going to blow their heads off, and I didn't want to be that person. So so it wasn't, so I had those ups and downs, I guess, where there were times where I'd think, geez, I've just got to. I'm worried about who I'm turning into. And, my partner was starting to look at me and think, well, what's going on here? And she was fabulous. She supported me through many dark, bad times. And unfortunately, in the midst of my PTSD, a couple of years later, we were married, and then not so long after that, I just left. I was so broken, and I didn't know how to cope with life. I just wanted to be alone. I just couldn't. I couldn't give anything. I couldn't accept anything. I was just broken. And that's the best way I can describe it. So it cost me my marriage as well, and broke her heart. And I've reconnected with her at the funeral of a very good friend, and I've apologised to her, and she still doesn't completely understand why, and to be honest, neither do I.
Oh.
You know,
And she moved on, is she with somebody else?
no,
No.
that's another sad story. But yeah,
Oh no.
yeah, it's the impact of trauma. It's and that's why I'm quite okay to talk about this, Dawn, because trauma has such an impact on people's lives everywhere. And if I can help someone unburden themselves, if they hear my podcast or read my books or listen to any other podcasts or media I've done, and they feel comfortable in talking to someone about how they are, and they can unburden before it has the impact it had on me, that's what I'm after. That's why I do it.
So what happens next?
I moved into the major crime area as a detective sergeant. But before that, I was working in the intelligence area, and part of a national task force on outlaw motorcycle gangs and all of the cool stuff again. But I was, just running surveillance and running TAC intel and strategic intel and so on. And I met my now wife in Melbourne. She was a detective in the drug squad, and that's meeting her just gave me a spark again and made me smile again, and God, she's been with me ever since, and she has incredible patience because she went through years of my crazy ups and downs with what we now know I have. But yeah, met her, just lightened my life, and she left the police force in Victoria, moved to Queensland, and we moved in together. And then I was promoted to a detective sergeant position in the major crime area, part of which allowed me the opportunity to run covert operatives and give them the support and the training that I'd never had. So it was a nice way to, bit of a karmic circle, I guess.
So what did you do differently than what your controller did for you?
Well, I didn't really have controllers, I guess, number one. And then, as their controller, I was concerned about how they were, what their emotional welfare was like, how they were coping with the job, the fact that they got the backup and the resources that I knew they needed, that if they needed surveillance, I'd fight for surveillance for them. Whereas when I was doing it, we were just out there by ourselves. So it was a nice opportunity for me. And what was kind of cool was more than one of them said, oh, Banksy, we look at you not just as our boss, but you're sort of like this big brother. Well, that's great, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to have them not think that they were abandoned like we were. So it's nice to affect positive change, and that was an opportunity for me to do it.
And do you think that still goes on today then? It's progressed, it's not gone
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
backwards?
Yeah. It's gone.
Good.
It's really good. I had the great pleasure to be invited to address the current covert people in Queensland only a few months ago. On the subject of resilience and identity and moral compass, and yeah, so that was kind of cool. First time
That
I've
is
been
cool.
first time I've been paid by the police force for a long time.
What was it like then being back? Not you're not obviously working for them, but back in that environment again.
You never leave. Yeah, you never really leave it, I guess. And the camaraderie and dare I say it, the brotherhood is something that you can never get outside. And the brotherhood is a term that is gender neutral, because even though everyone talks about the brotherhood, um, I'm just very conscious that the verbiage changes from generation to generation. But it's important for the listeners to know that it's that the women in the police force still call it the brotherhood as well, and they're quite proud of it. Um, and to be back in that was number one. That was great, and to be accepted again. The impact of my writing is much further than I thought, because all of them had read it. um,
Oh, that's
and
great.
yeah, it was great, and just then to see and know how much support and training and assessment that covert operatives have now to look after their welfare is really, really heartwarming.
That's good.
So yeah, it was cool.
I'm pleased to hear that.
Mm.
So tell me, you left the police. Why did you make the decision to leave it?
I probably intuitively knew that I was broken, but I'd applied for a promotion to the next rank up, and I'd been decorated by that time. I'd been given medals for the shooting and another situation I was in, and so I had publicity. Not that you ever want publicity or seek it out, but it's just the nature of it. So anyway, I wasn't promoted, so I went to the person in charge and asked for feedback. And after 45 minutes of weasel words, I said, because by that time I had a problem with authority. If it was good authority, loved it. If the people in positions where they don't know what they're doing, I had very little tolerance. And I said, so okay, let's cut to the chase, sir. What's the problem? And he said, well, if you want to know the truth, sort of, probably channel Jack Nicholson out of A Few Good Men or something. He said, he said, your problems are that you challenge authority. You need to understand that if you want to be promoted, you can't be one of them, as in one of my people. You have to be one of us. You're too outspoken, and your publicity doesn't do you any good. And I went, really? I said, okay, well, with respect. I'll always challenge authority where I see there are stupid decisions. I will always be part of my team, because rank doesn't mean that you separate yourself from them. I'll always question stupid decisions, and I said, as far as publicity is concerned, I don't get out of bed in the morning and go and look for a high risk job to do. I just do my job, which is what cops should do. And I just said, so if I need to change my personality to be promoted, then I think that says it all. And me being me, on the way out, I said, just be very careful in here, Superintendent, because those paper cuts can be horrible. And away I went. Which didn't really do my career any good. But at the same time, I was being asked by someone in the corporate world to apply for a job and work with him. And he was a veteran police officer from Victoria that I sort of knew. And he took me to dinner a few times, and around this time I said, "So tell me about this. Why would you want me to come and work for you?" And I kid you not, you can't make this up. He said, "I love the way you challenge authority. I love the way you're a person. I love the way that, all the things I was being told that weren't a good fit for the cops. He was telling me were perfect." So I literally went home and got a piece of paper out, and reasons to go, reasons to stay. And the only reasons I could think to stay were job security, camaraderie, and adrenaline. And I had something like 16 or 17 other reasons to go, and I just free wrote it. Hardest decision I ever made, though, because I'd lived and breathed this job, and I thought I would be, doing it for 40 years, and I just realised that I couldn't. But I thought, maybe it is time. I've used up my 9 lives. I've been in, by that time, God, 4 shootings, almost been blown up, almost been murdered by drug dealers, all of that sort of stuff, and thought, yeah, maybe I'd try my hand in the corporate world. So then I did. I moved in the corporate world and worked through a succession of roles there, and did a master's, mature age master's of business, and had a family, and moved on, and never really happy. I have to say, I was never really happy. I could no longer get those highs that I'd had in the first 20 years. Didn't have the sense of belonging, and I still had the classic PTSD. One of the symptoms of just challenging authority. So I'd work in a corporate field for maybe 2 years and go, yeah, you guys are idiots. I'm out. I'm gone. And I'd move on to something else and move on to something else. You know, and from what I see, the veterans I speak with now, it's pretty common. You know,
Same.
until you get some self-realization, I suppose. But I was fortunate. My experience in university quals got me more of my senior roles, and so my last role was made redundant a couple of years ago, which is all good. Probably the best thing that happened. And I was the chief operations officer, as I said, of a membership, of quite a large membership association. So that happened. I went, okay, cool. A couple of years earlier than I thought. That's all right. What am I going to do now? And that's when I really started getting a bit more into the corporate speaking space, and I started getting some engagements, and so I've ended up now speaking with the military people, with corporations ranging from civil construction to retail, to mental services, mental health services, and so on. So, I don't do it full time. I do it when I want to do it. And that sounds a bit arrogant, I know, but I'm also conscious of the fact that if I was to do this, I don't know, once every 2 weeks, it would probably have a bit of a negative effect on my recovery. Because I'm just keen to send the message about the need to be authentic around mental health, as much as I can, but while I'm still okay to do it. Yeah. Because I don't want to have, as soon as it starts to have a really an impact on me and take me back, then I'll step away for a while. And so I really appreciate you asking during the podcast, because you could see, how I was bringing those memories back. So I really appreciate you asking if I was okay to continue. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. But for me to have the opportunity to talk about my lived experience, whether it be through podcast, written word, or in person, I know I know has changed lives, because I've had people contact me and tell me, and I've had hundreds of them, and I answer every message. I answer every message individually, and ask people how they're doing, and I just only wish, and you can't change the past, but I wish that I'd had the opportunity to speak to someone decades before, because I would have recovered decades before. So any little thing I can do to help people, get over their stuff, come to terms with their stuff, move through their stuff, I will. for sure.
That's lovely that, yeah, you want to help other people. Well, you're still going through it yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we should all do that as humans.
And how's your family? Have they noticed changes in you?
Yeah, yeah, they have. Yeah, which is lovely. I still have some bad days. I don't think you can ever really get over PTSD. Um, but what I can do now is know when the bad days are coming, and I now have the courage and the permission to tell my family, whereas before I would have hidden it. Um, and no, they're fabulous. So no, it's all good. It's all good news.
Are you going to miss your daughter then if she's going to London?
Yeah, yeah. Well, she's actually downstairs now. She's just popped in to do some work from home. So,
Oh,
yeah, we talk a lot. So it is going to be a hole in our lives when she goes. But she's over there to embrace opportunity, and she loves London. So, we'll be seeing her when we're over there on holidays, and I guess we'll be holidaying a lot more.
oh, definitely. Good excuse.
Yeah, exactly right.
So tell me how you came about Traitors then in Australia.
Traders. Yeah, I didn't apply for it. I was actually asked whether I was interested, and that was through a one of Victoria's most well-known crime reporters who'd interviewed me a couple of times and written some stories about me. So the production company contacted him and asked him whether he knew of any former cops who might be okay. He said, "I've got just the guy for you." So
Hmm.
um, the whole experience in the Traders has taught me a couple of things. So there's a lot of editing that takes place, as I'm sure everyone understands in a reality TV program. And I've been trolled a bit, and that's okay. I don't care about that. But I've been trolled a bit about people saying you were a cop and you should have been able to do this. You should have, could have, would have, blah blah blah. And and what people don't understand is it's a game. And I went in there. I'd only seen one season of it, so I wasn't educated about it, and probably wouldn't have watched any more than that because I didn't want it to colour how I was going to do the thing. So I went in there with the intention, as you know, of not telling anyone about my past. Um, and I played what's called the grey man, and you do that in any special forces or tactical selection world. The grey man is someone who sits in the middle. You don't want to be the first. You don't want to be the last. You just want to be the one in the middle. So you're not selected or what's the word I'm after? So you don't become obvious to the instructors or the selection course, and it was the same with the traders. So my plan was to get in there. I so pushed to be a trader. It wasn't funny because I knew I could have gotten away with it because I'm such a good liar. And and unfortunately, I wasn't chosen. So when I wasn't chosen, I thought, well, the only way to play this game is look, learn, observe, and listen. But when I figure out who one of the other traders might be, absolutely be their friend and throw other people under the bus as long as it takes. So that's exactly what I did. The problem with editing is that interviews that are done with us on a one-to-one basis, each contestant is interviewed a couple of times after every episode, right? So I was talking to a particular producer, and I won't even name the gender, but that person said, "Are you suspicious of anyone?" And I said, "I'm pretty sure Sam's sus." And this person said, "Well, why aren't you voting for him?" I said, "Because that's not how I'm playing the game." And they said, "But it's traitors. You're supposed to find the traitors." And I said, "No, no, I'm supposed to survive." So what I'm doing is I'm happy to vote for people I know that aren't traitors to survive and hopefully be recruited. That would be ideal. Um, or get to a stage in the game where I'm going to go, right, now I'm going to pounce because I'm pretty sure Sam's sus. And I'll openly admit I had no idea about Blake. He and I are genuine friends, so I think I'd emotionally been blinded by that, and that's okay. But I was just waiting, watching. I was happy to vote for people, and this is what's blown people's minds, I think. So I knew for some of those poor people I voted, I knew full well weren't traitors, but get rid of them. And then I was looking at, getting my own little cabal together, and unfortunately, I left my timing a little late. um, but as I was sitting there, because I'd said to the production team, look, I'm probably going to get banished soon. I've just got a sense of it. when I am, can I have a couple of minutes to tell my story? And they all knew my background. So all the producers did, all the cameramen, the sound guys, everyone knew my background except the contestants. And it was a pretty cool, if I may, one morning, one of the sound guys walked in and he was, because we're all microphoned up, everyone knows that. And he said, look, mate, I know who you are. I know what you've done. I know what you do for PTSD. I want to shake your hand. And I went, oh, wow. So thanks, mate. Tell me, how do you know? He said, I've listened to a couple of podcasts. So over the course of a 10-minute chat, asked him his background. He had been a soldier, or a sapper actually, in Afghanistan 3 times in front of the patrols finding the bombs, finding the IEDs. And I went, mate, let me shake your hand. But what a beautiful moment was it? Just, wow. So anyway, as I'm sitting there in the banishment room, and the banishment room, I'm sure everybody knows enough about reality television to know that those conversations go on for a lot longer than you see on screen. So as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I think I might be in trouble here tonight. Okay, what am I going to say? So that final little presentation I made about, my career and where I'd been and what I'd done, I literally invented in about 5 minutes, because I was just sitting there thinking, maybe I'll say this, maybe I'll say that, maybe I'll say this. And then the votes come out and I went, yeah, okay, here we go. But I have to say, I didn't go there with any intention of winning, or I didn't go there thinking I was going to win the whole thing. There were certain others who did. That was their focus. My focus was, at this stage of my life, just to have a good time and do something I've not done before.
Yeah.
I have to admit, though, that the axe throwing part, I've done axe throwing before. I was,
Oh, have you?
yeah, I was deliberately just faking a bit of it.
Oh, what?
Because I was after
Because that seemed to go on for a while.
Yeah, I was going for a while, all right. Then I got to the
Yeah.
stage, I thought, oh, bugger this. So, because again, I was trying to stay under the radar because, my cover, if you would, was that I'd been in the corporate world all my career and I was just some boring dude who did a bit of, mental health conversation because I'd had some dramas in my life. So to suddenly be an axe thrower and part of the moving to that big hill run that we did, as we were driving, someone said, oh, what do you think we're going to be? And I got excited and I said, God, I hope it's abseiling because I love abseiling. And they went,
Oh, no.
if you did abseiling, I'm thinking, okay, shut up now. Okay.
Oh, you think you would have been good at just keeping it zip.
Well, I got excited when it came to abseiling because I loved it. But no one, as you knew, no one picked up any hint of my police career.
No.
But so that to me was a lot of fun, and I've made some great friends out of it. We actually had a little reunion only a couple of weekends ago.
Oh, nice.
With myself and Blake and Payden and Annabelle and Gloria. And we went to a pub and had had a bite to eat and some beers and some laughs. So yeah, so it's been a great experience.
That's good to stay in touch.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you stayed in touch with him because I know you got close to a couple of them. Well, obviously, I'm more.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Blake particularly.
Yeah.
He's just such a nice guy, and I've spoken to Luke in Perth a few times. So yeah.
No, poor Luke.
Yeah.
He got a hard time.
Well, he made his run too early, and that's precisely what I didn't want to do. So, but it was a good experience. It was a really good experience.
It's fun to watch. So what's next for you then? Other than he said that, you might be doing another book. What's next and what's on the horizon?
Well, I don't know whether it'll air in the UK, but Channel 9 Network here in Australia has filmed 2 episodes of my story as part of a crime documentary. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I think they're looking at airing it maybe the middle of the year. Hopefully not when I'm in the UK. But yeah, they took quite some time to film it. They flew me back to certain locations in Brisbane and on the Gold Coast. They interviewed my daughters about their experience growing up with me, and they've done a really wonderful job. Yeah.
Wow.
So it'll be worth watching. So I'll let you know if I don't know whether you'll look at. Don't know whether
I'll try and find it.
you might be able to find it online.
Tell me what it's called, and I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, Australian crime stories, and it's subtitled The Investigators. So
That's really cool.
yeah,
I mean, how
and
was that? Was that emotional going back to these places?
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. In a good way, I think. You know, there are some unbidden tears that happened. But you know, again, very powerful, and I agreed to do it only if I could talk about mental health and resilience, which they did. So yeah, that's my platform now. You know, any opportunity I have to talk about, you know, recovery and quite simply, I say at the end of a lot of my conversations with groups is, you know, if I can get over my shit, you can get over yours, because mine was pretty tough. And it's not about, I'm not a clinician, I'm not an expert, I've just lived through it. And, you know, whatever I can do to help people by sharing that, I will.
That's good.
So
Sounds like you are, and you're going to continue
that's my life
doing your
now.
public speaking.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and still training. I still train in my karate dojo, probably at least 4
Do
times a
you?
week.
You must be an expert now.
No, I don't think you're ever an expert, but no, I love it. It's tribal, and it's connection, and it's shared purpose. And you know, some of those bad days that I still have, I get in my car and I drive, and then I put my gi and my belt on, and I walk in, and it all goes away.
That sounds good.
Just amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's been really lovely speaking to you. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. It's been surreal.
You're a very yeah. You're very easy to talk to, Dawn, and I really appreciate you contacting me. You know, and yeah, I see your listenership is quite impressive. So, you know, all those people out there who are listening to this who are struggling, just talk to someone. Just say to someone, "Have you got 5 minutes for me?" And if you're out there in part of your listenership and someone comes to you to talk to you, don't try and solve their problems. Just listen to them. You know, it's just a matter of having someone having the ability to be an active listener, and then the other person having the ability and the trust to talk to someone and be vulnerable. That is just so powerful. You know, I wish I'd done it years before I did.